Cool. Hi everyone. Right, I'm just going to give you just a quick kind of brief overview of Beamley, very quickly. Let you know who we are and where we come from, and then Jo is going to run you through her experience, all the different places that she's been, and then a little bit of a workshop running through kind of, you know, news and journalism, etc. So, Beamley started about 3 years ago as a company called ZBox, and then about 6 months ago, kind of, it was a very tech-orientated app, and then about 6 months ago, maybe slightly longer, changed into Beamley. Now, Beamley is a news and social media site around TV and celebrity, so kind of the type of content that they put out is very much similar to Heat World and those sort of places around, you know, current TV shows, salacious things, those sort of things. And in terms of visitors, in the UK, we've grown up to continuously month on month. We're now at about 3 million unique visitors every single month. Globally, because we're also in New York and Australia, we're at about 10 million unique visitors every single month. We have about 80 staff members working for us. Have I missed anything? That's pretty much been
Aussie and New York?
Yeah.
You did that?
Yeah. Cool. So then I'm going to hand over to Jo, who's going to talk through the session, and then afterwards, at the end, I'm just going to run through our contributor program where people can get involved if they'd like to as well. Cool.
Hello everyone. You can all hear me. I like this. It's very professional. It's a little mic. So as Zach mentioned, I am Joanna Abeyie. I'm one of the senior showbiz journalists at Beamley and also content producer. I think I'm getting feedback on that. I'm also the founder and director of Shy Media, which is a social enterprise that purely aims to increase diversity within the journalism industry. A lot of you have already been tweeting me, so I know you've all done your research, which is very impressive. A little bit about me in terms of journalism before I go on to run the lecture. I started very young, at 16, in journalism. The reason I started so young was I was at a sixth form college where I was quite conscious of what I'd be doing next. So I was thinking about A-levels, what would I do after my A-levels? And I said to my careers advisor, I really think that I want to be a journalist. I don't know how on earth I get into this field. I don't have a family that knows anyone that can give me any tips, really. So but this is how long ago it was actually, we had to write letters so what I did is I went into a newsagent and she said, you know, go and get some work experience. And I was like, okay. And because I used to spend all my sort of pocket money at the time on magazines, I used to watch loads of TV and stuff, I went and bought all the magazines that week that I was really interested in and some more adult ones that I just seemed to assume would give me a job. And I wrote them a letter and posted that into them, and I got like, a lot of rejections. But bearing in mind, in there were magazines like Vogue, Elle, In Style. So like, hi, can I have a job? I want to be a journalist. Obviously, they ignored me because I was 16. But Now Magazine were nice enough to say, okay, come in. We're doing this sort of outreach thing where we're letting teenagers come in and do some work experience. So that's where it all started. I came in for a week. It was good fun. I ended up doing things like cleaning out the cupboard and making tea. Your face. Everyone's like horrified. But that is sometimes when you start off and you do some work experience, as I'm sure some of you probably have, you do have to start off doing some of the not quite so exciting jobs. But I did do them. I did do the tidying up with a bit of a smile on my face, and that was only Monday and Tuesday's tasks. So Wednesday through to Friday, I ended up interviewing some really good people within television. Some quite big names at the time actually, and I impressed them, so they asked me to come back, and I did another week, and then I impressed that week, and they that's when the networking snowball started, because then I just started talking to everyone who was anyone in the building and got them to introduce me to the relevant people. And before I knew it, I was graduating at 21 from the University of Reading, and I'd already written for about 40 publications by that time. So I was really heavily into writing. So those were newspapers, so a lot of our nationals, a lot of our tabloids, For All My Sins, the consumer magazines, and I was also doing quite a lot of radio, so at BBC London and BBC Radio 1 and Radio 1 Extra. And then I did a master's in journalism at City, and I did that for a year. I couldn't afford my master's actually, it was £9,000 to do my master's. I didn't have that money, so I had to apply for a bursary, which the BBC gave me. It was specifically for people from diverse backgrounds who wanted to get into journalism. and they paid for your course, and then they allowed you to come in and work for the business for 6 months. And when you came in for those 6 months, you also had to try and find other ways that they could attract other diverse talent to the BBC, which is kind of how the passion for Shy Media started to come about. So fast forward now, I'm 22, working at the BBC, having a great time, launched Shy Media purely for people like me who were trying to get into the industry, were from working class backgrounds, people with disabilities, people from BAME backgrounds. You get the gist. It was really just to open up the newsroom to people that don't always necessarily get the opportunity to work within one. It wasn't just within print, it was also across television, production companies, broadcast television and online. That's pretty much it. Following the BBC, I can just do this very quickly, I then went on to work for a magazine called Pride, another one called Cosmopolitan, Virgin Media. Then I freelanced for about 18 months and I worked again for tons of people, including Sky and the BBC, Mail Online, did a lot of online work at that time. Then I worked for some US magazines called People and Life and Style and Us Weekly. Has anyone heard of those? Good. And then I did a bit more television and then went to a magazine called Closer, which I'm going to talk about in this because you'll learn a lot of lessons from Closer. And then I went and joined the team over at Beamley in March, so I've been there a year. Any questions before I start lecturing you all on journalism? If that wasn't a lecture already. Any questions? No? Okay. I'm not sure how much you know about how this session's going to work, but so far I believe you've kind of had people just talking you through their careers. We decided to change things up a little bit, and I'm actually going to try and give you some help on how to get into showbiz journalism and entertainment journalism. Is there anyone in the room that actually wants to do this? Oh, at least that helps. Might have been a wasted journey otherwise. And anyone else, do you have, the ones that don't want to be in celebrity journalism, can you just shout out the areas of journalism that you are interested in so I can try and include them? Politics. Good. Sorry? Radio. Anywhere else? Sorry? Sport. Okay. Right, so first of all I'm going to start off with sourcing stories. Now, I'll try and include sport and politics into this, but traditionally within entertainment and showbiz journalism, the ways that we would source stories are through photographers. Photographers being paps. We all know what they are, right? Yes. So they are almost like the eyes and ears of the world of celebrity. And the reason I say that is while you're at your desk filing or you are running around trying to organise interviews, they are just following famous people. They know where they live, they know what flight they're getting on, they know what place they go to for their coffee, they know everything. They even know what side of the car they get out of because they're constantly following them. So they're a brilliant source of information. If you ever get the opportunity to meet a pap or a photographer that is in the world of celebrity, it is always worth getting their details because they see and hear everything. A lot of our stories do come from them. And what's brilliant now is that more and more you need the pictures. The pictures tend to sell the stories more now than they ever did. So the fact that you can get a picture and a little bit of a blurb around that picture is even more crucial. So if you can get a hold of an agency or a photographer, please make sure you make that contact because they'll be brilliant for you. When you do make a contact, guard them with your life. The reason I say that is because the difference between you and another reporter, especially on a showbiz news desk, is your contacts. They want, the thing that will sell you into a publication or a newsroom is your ability to say, I know so-and-so, I can get them on the phone, I can get us a chat with them, they'll talk exclusively to us because of my relationship with them. So you don't have to be catty or mean about it, but do guard them. Don't just be giving out their number to everyone willy-nilly. PR and management, they play a big part in stories and creating stories, and that is because the publicists will always try and stop stories coming out. As you know, many of the stories that have come out have PRs have attempted to stop them. So that is, especially in the world of footballers and kiss and tells, they do a hell of a lot to stop those stories coming out. So it's quite important that you have good relationships with PRs so you can actually go back to them and say, we've had this story come through from one of our sources, can you give us a comment on it? Now, you all know about right to reply. Yeah, so I don't need to go into that. Right, and that's another reason why it's important that you can liaise with a PR. Also, your relationship with a PR is quite important. Now, at Beamley, we would like exclusive video. We would like exclusive images. So if I've got a really great relationship with a PR, and we have the same amount of hits as, say, Heat, I believe we've beat Heat, but if we did have the same, it might be my relationship with them that determines whether Heat get that or we get that. So that's why it's really important that you don't upset them too much. You will do, Don't get me wrong, there'll be a time when you write a story that is factually true, that's going to sell a hell of a lot of copies of your newspaper or magazine, that PR is going to try really, really hard to stop you from writing. And in those instances, it's just a case of carefully negotiating and seeing if you can trade stories, which you will learn about as you go into the field. Yeah, another way you can find that is through record labels and exclusive diaries. And you can, this is another way to start. If you're someone that's really interested in film or music, a good way to really break in is to find out who the developing talent is. If you go on any artist or label website, you will see who their main artists are, and they will be the bigger names, the Jessie J's, the Tiny Tempers, the Adeles, and then they'll always have an area that purely focuses on developing talent. Now that's a good place to start, especially as a student journalist. If you can get in with those PRs and say, I'd really like to interview whoever it is, or I want to come down to this gig and review it. If you can do that with their developing talent, remember most developing artists have got money behind them, they might have signed a publishing deal and it takes a while before they come out and they blow up. Jessie J, who I know, she was signed for a very, very long time before anything happened with her. However, she's never forgotten those journalists that were interested in her when she was just a YouTuber, and I can tell you that factually, because when we're on the red carpet with her, they are the people that she will still make sure she stops for. So it's worth getting in with them early on and getting to know the PRs, and also when you get into a publication or you get into a newsroom, whether it's television or radio, and you say, okay, I'm now at Radio 1, or I'm now at Capital, or I'm now at BBC News, they'll go, oh, right, yeah, and they would be responsive in offering you content because they know that you were supporting their talent when no one was really paying it much attention. So that's a really good way to get in. If you can go along to parties, concerts, and just be savvy as well. One thing I'll say about contacts, a lot of the time I'm asked, how do you know who a contact is? Well, you could just be invited off the cuff or go to a concert. The security guard at the concert could be a contact. Because you could ask him, you know, what happened at the after party? Was anyone here? Was anyone trying to get in? Was there a fight? Was there an argument? Were they kissing? Were they arguing? Anything like that. I'm not saying go for all the bad stuff. I'm just saying you could go and ask those questions, and you never know, you might find a really nice anecdote from them which actually makes a line that you can then sell to a paper. That could happen now. You don't have to wait to get a job to do that. That's just being savvy. You could go to a fashion show and see that there's I don't know, someone from Towie that's going to be on the catwalk. Just go over and say hello to her hairdresser. You could get some tips, beauty tips from the hairdresser or from the makeup artist. None of this has to be negative, but you could sell that into a weekly magazine or a monthly. So you've got to think, contacts are anyone that knows the people you want to know, basically. It could be a taxi driver. Social media and fan sites. The reason I say this is, and I've said this, I feel like a bit of a parrot, because Zach's probably heard me say it so many times, but often when I'm on a red carpet at a premiere or a music launch or a concert or whatever it might be, there are always the same fans who are always on that red carpet with me to the point where they know my name now. They're like, hi Joe, you okay? They are at everything. They can tell me stuff that I find sometimes hilarious. Sometimes I'm finishing a premiere and I'm walking off and they're like, are you going to Heathrow now? I'm like, no, why? Why should I be going to Heathrow? And they're like, oh, because Nicki Minaj is going to get on that flight. A flight comes in at such and such. You know, how would you even know that? But these fans follow them on Twitter, follow them on Instagram. They speak to them every time they come to the country. And you know this because I've been outside, like Kiss FM, for example. Rita Ora's walked out, and she knows every single one of their names because they're following her everywhere she goes. So she'll actually tell them, oh, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go there, just so that they can meet her again. So that's another way to really find out more information about those people. Get to know those sort of Twitter people that are going to try and attempt to kill you if you say something about One Direction. They're going to know a hell of a lot about One Direction. So they'll tell you where they all are. So that's another way to befriend them in a legal way. And then, of course, make sure that if you do use, and I'm sure you've gone through copyright in your media law. Do I need to touch on that, or everyone's aware of that stuff? Aware? Okay. Yeah?
Yeah. Do it level 6, copyright.
So I don't need to go into that.
And postgrads. Wouldn't hurt to
Okay, so thank you. Guys, feel free to talk to me by all means. So when you are taking anything off social media, because this is often, as you'll see, especially online, journalists will take a picture or a video that's come from Instagram. Now, one of the big rules that you must remember is just because that person has posted it doesn't mean that you have the right to post it. Now, this has come up for us at Beamley a few times when We've seen a lady that's been on, so let's say Cheryl Cole, she's on the red carpet and she's wearing a dress, and her pat picture, she'll repost that on her Instagram. She probably has been given permission by that photography agency to promote that picture purely so that myself and the people at all the news desks go, we want that picture, and we'll ring the agency. Because she's posted that doesn't mean you're allowed to, and you could still get into trouble for that. The pictures that you're probably a little bit safer to use are the ones where it's obviously a selfie in their bathroom, or it's obviously something that they've taken themselves. And then, of course, you still have to accredit the social media site that you've taken that from. So just make sure, if you don't know, if in doubt, please double check, because you can get sued, you can get yourself into serious trouble. And one thing I will say, aside from knowing all your news and knowing how to write features and being able to use everything digitally now, it's just as important that you know your law. Just as important. That probably sounds really boring me saying that, but it really is, because the difference between you staying and going on anywhere you work is if you know the laws, because if you break them, you cost whether it's the BBC newsroom, whether it's Channel 4 newsroom or Sky or a radio station or a magazine, if you cost them any money, you're gone. They don't want you to make them get sued. They really don't. So make sure you are across that. Another big thing that's really important, whether you are working within radio or television, is to understand who your audience are. Now, and this goes across all genres, whether it's fashion, food, sports, politics. There's one way that and also understand the political alignment of newspapers as well, and news outlets, because it's really important that you understand how you would approach a story in comparison to your competitors. And the only way you'll know that is by understanding who your audience, your readers are, and where you are aligned politically also. So some of the things that are really important to think about are tone. So the words that Beamley say that we have for our tone are fun, we're irreverent, we're friendly, and we're cheeky. So anytime I write something, or anyone writes something, or we do video, or we do any sort of filmed content, we've got to think, are we sticking to that tone? Because that's the way we communicate with our audience, and that's how they respond to us. You need to know who they are. So we know that our audience is a woman. We know the age range of our audience. We know of that woman. We know what she's doing, when she's doing it, how she accesses her news. And you need to really be able to profile who your reader is, because then you'll be able to understand effectively, who it is, what the content is, that they would want. And especially at this stage in your career, when you're probably freelancing and trying to pitch ideas for commissions. If you don't show your awareness of who your audience is, you will not get that commission. It's so important that you understand that, because the first thing they're going to say is, why would we want this? Why would Cosmo want this over Elle? Why would Radio 1 want this over Capital? Why would LBC cover this story over BBC Breakfast? And you need to be able to understand why they would cover that and why they would cover it now. So you're only going to be able to get to that point if you understand who it is that is listening to them, or watching them, or reading them. Also, another thing that's quite important, especially online, and the reason I keep mentioning online is because even if it's TV or radio, your online presence is just as important. Because ultimately, you're wanting to, if you've got a TV show happening, or you've got anything going on the television, you want to get everyone that's talking on social media to come over to that and join that conversation that's happening on your channel, because then you can charge more for your advertising. It's all a big business. As much as we're probably in it for the news and uncovering good stories, it's also a business, so you need to be able to understand how news fits in with, and journalism fits in with social media and branding. Does anyone have any questions about that? No? Okay, so when I say audience behaviour, you should be able to spot trends and popular posts. So often we could do this at Beamley. If an article's being shared a lot, we'll start to know, oh, people really liked that story. If it's getting a lot of comments, oh, that's really inspired some conversation and engagement with our readers and our users. That information is usually what we then go on to see that we would use actually to influence what type of content we continue to write about. Because there's no point writing things that no one cares about. It's quite, and that's where you can find out from audience behaviour who does actually care about what topics and what ones are going to do really well. And ultimately, you want hits on your site, therefore you should be able to identify what's going to get you the most amount of hits. And you can be able to compare the popularity of content as well, be able to do that. So if you know that something's not getting any love at all, then maybe do less of that, or repackage it in a different way. And if you're able to identify that, I promise you your editors will really, really appreciate it, especially if you're thinking of going into online. Okay, I've got to do this really fast because I've only got an hour, and we usually do this in 3 hours. So what makes a good story? I'd like to put it out to you guys now. You're all savvy journalists. You've all been tweeting. 2 of you have just interviewed me. Very impressive. So if you could pick a story from these newspapers, and of course if you've got your tablets and stuff, feel free to grab them from online, and I'd like you to consider how you would cover them for a news bulletin or a radio broadcast. So you can think about, we can actually open it up, you can think about it if you wanted to run the story in a newspaper, if you wanted to run it in a magazine, whether it's for television bulletin or if you wanted it to be for radio. I want you to think about the images you would use, the video you would use, social media, and how you'd engage your community. Anyone unclear? No. Are you excited to be doing this? Good. Okay, everybody. We have to stop now because we've got to clock watch this session. So, who wants to go first and give their feedback? Don't all rush at once. Ah, good. Good, good, good.
We did it for radio.
Okay, brilliant.
I just did like a 3-part cue and then did a tweet. Sorry.
You did a what, sorry?
I did like a 3-part cue and then did a tweet.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We put,
What's the story you chose?
about Becky Watts.
Okay.
So we put a dismembered body has been found in a house nearby where Becky Watts vanished. The 16-year-old from Bristol has been missing since February the 19th. The 21-year-old man and a 21-year-old woman are amongst the 7 people being questioned by police.
Was that confirmed that that was? Yeah. You said it's a confirmed. Yeah.
I haven't said that it was confirmed. It was her in the queue.
But is it in the report?
No.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
And then we did our tweet is dismembered body found in search for missing Becky Watts. And then a link.
That's got good. That's good. The tweet's not very nice, obviously. But no, that's good. What images would you use with that? If you had something online, because I know you're on radio. No.
Probably, I think it's a bit risky to use an image of her, even though you could. I don't know whether you can do that with the dismembered body. I think it would probably be a little bit risky. So probably just a police image.
Police image. Okay. And if you could run any VT that would play on the website to go alongside the radio bulletin. Because you know, often when you do a report, they'll say, if you've got any information or whatever, you can go to our website. What might be on the page to the website that?
What, like Police 101?
No, so on the website for, which radio station would that be for?
A local one, probably.
Sorry?
A local one.
Yeah. So if you went to their website, what video content might you put on there? If you might run a VT.
What, like images of them with the white tents and everything?
Could do that. What about the rest of your team?
Maybe an image of the house.
Yeah. Okay. Have I covered it all? Images, video, social media. Okay. Good. Round of applause. We can't do much for the community on that one. Who wants to go next? Okay. Who had the tabloid? Was it you guys?
Yeah.
Which did you have? The Sun? Yeah. What story did you pick out?
We were looking at the one where Tom Cruise and Rebecca climbed up that building. And, yeah, that one.
Where who, sorry?
They climbed up to the Wellington Arch and took a selfie on the top of it.
Who's that?
David Beckham and Tom Cruise.
Right, okay. So what?
The Sun saying we didn't write a story, but we'd say we'd do it on the radio, we'd talk about it, but then we'd link to our website.
But what would you talk about? Just the fact that they've climbed up? What?
We just found a story. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've got, obviously, if you pick a story, you have to think about how you would cover that story. How are you going to move that on? Who was in your group?
We had many ideas.
We had a rough idea.
Yeah.
Right.
About someone that was it was on Dragon's Den and they refused his idea.
Okay.
So I thought either for radio or online, for radio you could use some of the audio on the
Yeah.
show that he was on.
Where he was rejected.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then link to the website where you can have the video of when he was there and maybe an interview with him if you can get access to it and all that kind of thing.
That's good. How would you engage your community? That's a good way to. That's a good story to be able to engage.
What they thought about the original business idea and would they invest in it if it was like Rockefeller or something.
That's a good idea. That's good.
Could you do like a playful quiz? Like what sort of Dragon's Den person would you be, or which judge would you be, or anything else like that?
See, things like that, any sort of extension to your story which engages people to keep reading the content that you make is really, really important these days. That's why I'm like sort of badgering you for the social media element, because the story's good, and obviously you quite quickly told me how you would cover it, which is fun, but you just need to always think about how you would build on that story and get other people to keep returning to you. I've got time for one more, right?
Yeah, let's do one.
We think our newspapers are really sort of trying something online.
Okay.
I saw an article earlier, maybe Matt, about a Japanese island where cats outnumber humans.
Nice.
And for the sort of thing that I like looking at on BuzzFeed and stuff, just
Yeah.
quirky stories. And I was thinking like we could have done something based on this, drawing like the cat element from YouTube. You know, people are obsessed with cat videos. And in fact, there's a lot of people out there that have been moved to this island. I know I've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
would.
yeah.
So I thought we just wanted to incorporate that, didn't we, really? Just that quirky element of cats and, you know, to just...
So what would these, so sell it to me, I'm your editor, what's it going to look like? What's the story going to be?
Like the comparisons between there being 22 people and then just over the edge of the cats and just kind of actually getting the street view. Even just a video of do like 3-minute footage of different plans of a village and it would look hilarious and just sending that would go viral on Twitter and then kind of feed that into Facebook just kind of like
How would you...
Thing,
Yeah,
that's why
definitely.
It wasn't too serious.
Yeah.
It was quite light and just sort of making fun of the whole cat aspect and how there's like this phenomenon now with like cats and the fact that there is actually an island that, you know, they are taking over almost. So yeah, it was mainly like a tongue-in-cheek sort of article. It wasn't too serious.
Yeah.
I think it was just sort of looking at that BuzzFeed audience and just keeping it light.
Well, seeing as there is this phenomenon around cats, how might you engage your readers, watchers, viewers on social media? I know you mentioned...
probably just funny cat memes, like there's loads on here and just like hilarious, really stern looking cats and there's just like a pack of them, like a 50 and then that comparing the 22 people that live on the island, old fishing islands, just kind of do like stories of cats fishing and whatever else.
Can you just like twist it and just say sort of like this is the cats taking over the world sort of thing?
Yeah.
Just do a spooky sort of video. I don't know if you get some techie person to, I don't know, do something on the final cut of cats taking over the world. I don't know.
I think the reason why I'm pushing on it because it's quite an interesting thing, and as you know, BuzzFeed's like a massive, huge site for things like for content like this. So I think it's really good that you thought about that. And there's ways you could have sort of even included Instagram and Twitter, because as you say, there's memes all the time, and there's.
Set up your own sort of cat Instagram account from the island and just chilling out by the harbour.
Yeah, you could just make people take pictures with their awkward pictures with their cats and all sorts. You could do so much of it, couldn't you? Really.
I did a competition, really quick, dirty competition that was just
Dirty.
It was just really quick, like something on Twitter, but basically, what would the world look like if cats did rule us? And then just go through like they would make us drink milk out of saucers, and they'd give us litter trays and all that sort of stuff.
You could make it really fun. That's really good. I like that one. Okay, well done, everybody. That was brilliant. I'm conscious I've got to speed up, so just to reiterate what makes a good story. So news, tell me something new, which is why I said to you young ladies at the front here, what are you going to add to it? You have to think. So a lot of the time, especially online now, you'll notice that you might see the same story covered everywhere, but what you've got to think about is how are you going to cover it differently? What are you going to tell me that's new about it? Hence the news element. Can you shock me? Can you interest me? Are you going to spark a conversation? Are you going to provoke a debate? Compelling images and engaging video. The reason I ask that is more often than not now, it's the image that will sell the story straight away. If we've got any stories in our editorial meetings in the morning, this is whether I've been working on a paper or in broadcast, they will always go, what are the pictures like? What have we got? What's the sound bites? What lines have we got? What can we visualise? What can we make people visualise when they're listening to the story or watching the story? How will when they are looking at that or listening, what emotions will I provoke that will make them react to it? And that's what you need to always think about whenever you're doing anything. What pictures, what images, and video can I give? And again, I've said about the great sound bites. Sound bites are so important. Sometimes you get one line and it's gold because it goes everywhere. And you could have had a 15-minute chat with someone and they fluffed the rest of it with just sort of nothing that's that newsworthy, and they give you that one line, that one nugget, and that can go everywhere and that can get you noticed. So it's important to be able to find those really good sound bites and anecdotes. Making sure you have teasing headlines and a call to action. The reason why I asked you guys what you'd put on Twitter is often the content is there and that's half the job done, especially online now. Now you need to say, okay, make everyone look at this. How am I going to get you to come and visit this? If you're busy doing something else, why are you going to read this news story? So that's why we say call to action. We have a lot of them. If you ever went on the Beamley site, the Facebook page, so there's a lot of questions in the headlines that make you click on it because it's going to answer a question. So it's enticing you to want to read it or find out some new information. It's the same with SEO and related links. Always make sure that you're using keywords. If you know that they're really popular search terms, throw them in your headline if you can, because you want to come up tops. And again, if you are ever writing anything online or you are putting video out there, just say, you know, if you're going to like this, you would like these. Keep people engaged with you, keep people staying with you, because then you can say to, especially if you've got blogs and you're trying to build up your own website, if you can say, these people come and visit our site, this is how long they click on this is how long they stay there, once they've read that they move over here, that you can prove to someone why it was worth investing in putting some advertisements on your blog or on your site. And I'm telling you now, that's how a lot of the bloggers have made revenue. Access is really important. So the reason I go to a lot of launches and I'm constantly running around is because I'm always trying to get access to the talent. So I will liaise with PRs, I'll go down to premieres, I will go down to launch parties and get access to those people. Even if it's the launch of Uber cars, but the whole of Made in Chelsea is going to be there. If I want interviews with Made in Chelsea, that's precisely where I need to be. So you need to think like that. If you want, even premieres, often there might be the 50 Shades of Grey premiere that just happened, but there'll be not just the cast, there'll be a whole host of other names that would still be relevant for a news story, that are still newsworthy at the moment, that just want to be pictured on a red carpet. And you should be getting to those things and thinking, I need to get access to those events and to those things that are happening so I can get access to the people and get my own stories. That's what's going to separate you from any other reporter, is what you can bring and what stories you can bring to the table. Again, engaging the community and having competition and rewarding your community. Do you want to quickly speak on that? No. Rewarding. So, for example, we, especially when the X Factor show was on, being at Beamley, we would cover a lot of TV shows. We would interview a person from the X Factor every week. One idea that Zach came up with was to ask our readers to submit some questions, which we did. It's fine. That's usually quite a popular thing that we do and common thing that publications will do. But how we rewarded them was we created a board, that had all the names of the people that had asked the question, and we got each person that we interviewed to hold it up and it said, like, we love you, blah, 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 blah. And that went and got tweeted, because especially if you're a young person, you're really interested in one of the boy bands on X Factor, you get quite excited that they're holding up a card with your name on it and a big, huge love heart. So sometimes just finding the simplest ways to reward those people that have engaged with you so that they keep coming back. Do I have time to show that?
We'll show the video, it takes 2 seconds.
Okay, so yeah, the reason why I was stressing you about compelling videos and images is if you remember when that picture came out of Rihanna, that broke, and then everyone was like, what on earth has happened? So sometimes that is the thing that will sell the story into the news. Likewise, you've probably seen this video. Has everyone seen the Beyonce? Yeah, everyone always laughs at this bit. So as I say, generated so many stories because you didn't even know what had happened or why. So if you're ever at an event, there is always a benefit to having your camera phone out and videoing it and filming, especially if you're in a public place. Do I need to speed up? Yeah, there's a couple of examples that I can probably give you. So I don't know if you remember when Leona Lewis, it was a couple of years ago actually many years ago, she was doing a book signing at Waterstones, and it was down in London on Regent Street, and there's a university quite close to it called Westminster University of Westminster, sorry. And there was a journalism student that was in the queue, and they'd been, savvy enough to go, I'm going to go and get this book signed, and hopefully she'll give me a line and I can sell it in. Actually, she was punched in the face that day, and by someone who was, a fan wanting to have their book signed. And that young journalist filmed the whole thing and took a photo. He was paid a hell of a lot of money for those pictures by Heat magazine, and it was the front cover. It was a leading picture. So the reason I say it's important to really be thinking as a journalist everywhere you are is, obviously I don't want you to try and, get people punched and video, but I mean, you never know what you might capture, which might make a news story, and you can sell that. Another thing happened quite recently, actually. I was at Media Week at a university in London, and basically in Holborn, near our office, a bus had gone too far into the trees and the roof of the bus had come off. I don't know if anyone saw that story. Well, that was captured by a student at King's College University. She got it on her phone. All the journalists ran to the scene, all the local papers, the Metro being one of them, and they'd got there too late. It all happened, they didn't have any pictures. And this young student said, have you got any pictures? Anyone got any pictures? And this young student had got pictures. And she said, okay, I can give it to you. Now, that's a really good way to establish a relationship with the journalist, because they need something that you have. So straight away, your idea, your content becomes your currency. So you're able to say, I can give it to you, it's going to cost you, because obviously it would cost them anyway. And then you can also harness that relationship and say, you know, I'm constantly out reporting. If I get some stories, I can send them through to you. So it's always worth just being around and about and just getting on with it and actually practicing what it is you've been taught on the course, because you'll get a lot of opportunities that way. Another thing I'll say is I was at a party once and there was a video of the One Direction boys, and one of my other reporter friends captured it, and it was only about, can't be more than a minute, and it went on the Mail Online. They got £30,000 for that video. So that's the sort of money you can get for these kind of things. It's really a good way to get yourself in as a freelancer, especially if you're still students. Okay, my last slide, quotes and case studies. Quotes are proof. It's always good if you can get someone to speak to you, and if you can find every which way to get them to give you the quote that you want. Anytime you're going to go to an event or anywhere where you think there's someone of interest that you want to speak to get a story out of, go there and know in your head what your headline is before you even get there. If you've done your research, you'll be able to identify that. It doesn't matter who you're interviewing, whether they're a politician or a sportsman or a celebrity. If you know that you need to get a particular line out of them, then you need to find every which way to do that. So when you get there, make sure that you keep going at them from different angles until you get the line that you want. The quote from them is the proof that it happened. The proof that you, over everybody else, had a chat with them. That is gold in comparison. There's so many people that write arounds, that take information from the internet, and they clearly illustrate that they don't know any more than you do, really, than what they've gathered from the net. If you've had a conversation, you gain the authority on that story straight away, and your editors will love you. Also, it builds trust and loyalty. So your audiences will go, no, I'm going to listen to Radio 1, I'm going to watch MTV because they have their hand on the pulse. They have access to the people that I care about, and they get the interesting stories on those people, and they prove it to me. It's not a source, it's not someone said, it's that person has really candidly said such and such. So it's really important you're able to do that. It increases your profile. Most of the sort of famous names in journalism, whether it's within feature writing or television that I look up to, are people that have actually been very good at their job, and it's increased their profile for being good at their job, not for chasing fame, but for just being a very good journalist. Also, one thing we always ask for at work is to have a picture with them. So quite often in any of the interviews I do, I take a picture. It helps to prove that you were there and at the time you had that conversation on that date at that launch. The reason I say that as well is in magazines like Now, New, all the weeklies basically, and Closer, especially Closer, you are allowed to do source stories, which means that your editor is trusting that a source has given you some information and that is true. If you, in those instances, do not have it on tape, which I would never recommend, I'd recommend any time you speak to anyone and you put it into print that you have it taped, recorded, filmed, some evidence of it. One way that they would accept that that conversation happened, or they would be able to prove it, is if there's a photograph of you with that person at that time. So sometimes how stories have fallen in the past is you know that this conversation has happened in a party, the person might have been a little bit tipsy, they don't remember talking to you, and you can't even prove that they were there with you, but if you've got a picture you can, so it just helps you, it does support you, not just for the obvious reasons that you might want a picture of a famous person. And another element that I think you should always be savvy to is live streaming. And that is not just through Google Hangouts, but it's also through being at an event and tweeting live the whole time, making people feel that you are there every second of every day on their biggest news stories, especially if you're working for a 24 news operation, which generally is the case.
Do you want to take a couple of questions before I go?
Yes, any questions? Was that too fast? I feel like that was quite fast. Any questions about anything? It doesn't have to be about what I've spoken about. You guys just know everything. Ah, good, thanks.
About using social media and getting permission.
Mm-hmm.
Would you just tweet them and go, I'd like to use this? Would you ever use it if they said no, if it was a really good story? Can you get around it?
With social media, because it's out there, you don't really need to ask their permission per se, because it's put out there for the public. So you could use it. What I meant by that was you just have to credit it that it has come from Instagram on the post that you're using. Does that make sense? If it was a picture of a pat picture, you need to go to the photography agency to ask their permission.
So if it's from Instagram, you credit the site rather than the person who posted it?
Yeah, you put Instagram, because that's the thing. It's public, but it belongs to Instagram. Because when we have an account, Instagram own it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So they own the copyright?
Yeah, so you need to let them, you need to say to your reader or whoever's looking at it, this isn't ours, this is Instagram's. Because otherwise Instagram will be like, hey, that's ours. Back up. Any other questions? No? Okay.
I got one.
Oh.
That last slide there is great. It speaks about getting calls and putting trust and loyalty and stuff. But occasionally we might pick up a newspaper and read a celeb story, and some unnamed newspapers might occasionally quote somebody. They might say something like, "A gal pal can this week reveal." How does that make you feel? I mean, you obviously try to get on the record quotes.
Oh, how did it make me feel?
See newspapers get away with that, especially nationals as well.
Well,
because nobody checks up whether those quotes are.
Well, no, that's the thing. It is interesting because I used to think like that. I used to think, well, that could be anyone. Who's that? That doesn't mean it's a true story. But generally, those sources are reliable sources. So how I know that is when I was, I won't say actually, when I was at a couple of magazines, I used to constantly read source stories in the magazine. I think, how on earth would that person know that? But when you sit on that desk for long enough, you honestly wouldn't believe the people who are selling out on those people. It could be, and you saw that when with the Jude Law story, when it was like his family. I promise you, money sometimes, unfortunately, does buy a lot. So, I mean, I remember working at an agency, and there's one particular celebrity, and everyone in her circle would call us. Everyone. I used to be so uncomfortable with it because I'd hear like other people, and it could be her friend, it could be her sister, it could be her gym instructor. So when you say gal pal, sometimes that's literally one of her bestest friends that she just would never imagine has told that story. So the reason why they are kind of like protecting their identity is because they want that person to keep giving them stories, not because they don't want to say who it is. They would, if it went to court, they'd have to. But they do have a responsibility to make sure that those people are correct. Also, just from a sort of a pitching perspective, often I've submitted a story and I've told the reporter who told me that, and they have a right to protect my source and not say anything. And they might just tell their editor, who goes, "God, this is a really good story. How can we stand this up?" And in that instance, they will just make sure that that is a reliable source before they run it. Now, because they can be sued so much now, I know it does still happen, but there are a lot more sort of going through things with a fine-tooth comb. So often, if that gal pal or whatever, that will be for a specific reason. Doesn't mean that the person telling that story isn't making it up. But as a journalist, you have to assume that if you're being told something from someone who's usually reliable and it usually sticks to the truth, and it comes out that way eventually from the horse's mouth, that you can trust that they're telling you that. Doesn't mean they're not embellishing, if that makes sense. Is that clear?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I just wanted to know whether you felt any kind of impact from Levison and the Hacked Off group in the last couple of years, because obviously that's probably changed the landscape of your work quite considerably.
Will I be quoted if I answer this question? Okay. Let me think about my answer then. Sorry? Yeah, maybe I'll talk to you outside about that, if that's all right. Yeah. Any other questions that won't get me into trouble?
You said you set up Shine Media to increase diversity. Is it because you've received any setbacks in your career, maybe because of race or gender, or any reason?
No, actually. No, I set it up because I'm from a very working class background. I grew up in a council estate in southwest London. I didn't have any real family members that could go, "Oh, I know someone who could get you in." All I literally had was sheer determination that that's what I wanted to do. So I just knew that there would be lots of other people out there who still needed access to opportunities that would have had certain challenges. And I just wanted to help eliminate some of those challenges. Also, it is a very big topic, but most of the time, broadcasters and publishers do want to access that talent. They just don't know how. So I wanted to be a place where they would learn how to access that talent, because I have a big talent base.
Cool.
I think I'm finished.
Okay, cool. Thank you ever so much. One thing I just wanted to talk to you about really, really quickly is a contributor program that we do run, which is effectively an opportunity. It's a network of people from different universities and other people that have seen articles that we've written, etc. And basically it's an opportunity for people to get involved, write content, have them submitted and have them published Now, for us, it's brilliant because, yes, it means that we get articles that come through and we publish them. The programme itself doesn't pay, but there is a number of different benefits that come with it. So what we do is, here's one example, which is Hannah. I'm going to use her as an example of someone that's really taken into the programme. But basically, she developed a portfolio through published articles. She also got professional feedback, but also we invite people to shadowing sessions such as Cirque du Soleil, which Joe went to. Hannah was able to go there on the red carpet, get some first-hand experience doing the red carpet. We also have work experience, so she joined us for a week and doing work experience. We also have larger competitions, and we were the first digital partner of the National Television Awards, and one of the things that we did was the top contributor over the course of 2 months would get to come, they'd get to do the red carpet, they'd get to be in the box with all the celebrities that were there, so we had Made in Chelsea and Towie and everyone else in there. They got to do the recording with all the winners, they got to ask the questions, got to be in the media room, etc., and have that as there, which is the article on the left, right on the screen. And then also we also put out intern roles and junior positions as well through the network as well. So she's literally, within the course of 3 months, she's gone from having about 50 articles published through to winning. We also give away Amazon vouchers each week. We give about £150 worth of Amazon vouchers to different people. She's won numerous Amazon vouchers. She's then gone to Cirque du Soleil. She's then gone to the National Television Awards. She then went through and did a week's work experience, and then she joined us, and she's now part of the team on a year's intern role, but strictly speaking, it's a fully paid, essentially a junior content writer role.
And she's very good.
And she's very good.
Very
good. Essentially, the only thing I was going to say is if anyone wanted to sign up and be a part of that programme, then feel free to pop over afterwards, come see me, either grab a card or give us your details. Otherwise, thank you ever so much for having us.